I give the call to the member for Lingiari.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Within the past 2 weeks, I've seen two incredible milestones within the Lingiari electorate, two significant achievements that is important for me to reflect on in this place. The first is the 56th anniversary of the Gurindji Walk-Off, and the second being the 40th anniversary of the Aboriginal Land Rights Northern Territory Act, one historic movement sparking another. This year, similar to most, we celebrated and commemorated the festival on Gurindji country. This day marks the 9-year struggle that saw Vincent Lingiari, the Gurindji, Mudpara and Warlpiri people bravely stand up to power and win their land back. I want to take a moment to reflect on the story of Vincent Lingiari, my electorate's namesake. It was a story of struggle, of determination and of an unshakable commitment to justice for the Gurindji mob and for all our people. Tired of being underpaid, tired of being forced to work for a rich man on his own country, tired of seeing his people treated unjustly, Vincent Lingiari made a stand. He walked off Wave Hill Cattle Station, refusing to work and leading his people down a humble creek bed. In this creek bed, Vincent Lingiari and the Gurindji mob stayed. 8 long years they camped, carrying a huge weight on their shoulders. The mighty trade union movement, who attended the Freedom Day festival in force, had worked for many years to support the Gurindji people, certainly during that struggle, visiting many times to drop off food and shelter. After 8 long years, finally justice came. Labor's Prime Minister Gough Whitlam arrived on Gurindji country to hand back Gurindji to their traditional owners. Many of you, no doubt, are well and truly acquainted with the legendary stories and photos of Gough Whitlam pouring sand into old man Lingiari's hands. But the story of Lingiari and the Gurindji people do not stop there. It was no simple happy ending for the Gurindji mob, who had to fight hard to keep their country, losing the cattle station and forced to continue their fight for justice. This story is a powerful one this country needs to hear more of. The Gurindji Festival celebrates, which I was honoured to be and attend alongside Senator Pat Dodson. It was a 3-day festival of culture, music, art, sport and lectures looking at the history, but also what we can learn into the future. It was the Wave Hill Walk-Off, which the Freedom Day celebrates. That led to the establishment of the Northern Territory's Aboriginal Land Rights Act. It helped create the 4 great land councils of the Northern Territory. That's Northern Land Council, Central Land Council and Diliaqua and Tiwi. These land councils are intrinsically connected to and representative of our communities, our bush. They all came together at Kalkaringi. The land councils play an enormous role in the Territory and indeed across the country. I want to thank those land council members for allowing both Senator Dodson and myself to attend their executive meeting. The Executive Council members from all regions discussed a range of topics affecting Aboriginal people in our communities, including the Uluru Statement of the Heart and a voice to Parliament, a Northern Territory treaty, housing. There are many concerns throughout the whole discussion, both urban and remote, and the drift from our remote communities into our urban centres and the impact into particularly some of the town camps that have been happening. Voter enrolment was certainly front and centre of a lot of the discussion. The urgent need to invest in our homelands was at the forefront, and when they were talking about child protection and safety, homelands are certainly an important part of this process. This government hears our land councils loud and clear, and I will work tirelessly to help and support their agenda. This was the first joint land council meeting in almost 20 years. You could feel the strength of the meeting as we all come together. I hope it's not another 20 years till we feel that again. And I know, having been involved in the Northern Land Council over the last 3 years prior to my election into this parliament, it was, and despite the efforts of the former Minister for Indigenous Australians, Ken Wyatt, I think he was part of a government that really didn't want to look at solutions on the ground in those communities. So I think he was stuck between a rock and a hard place. But it is certainly great to be part of a Labor government that hears those messages and that we can look at some of those solutions. A lot of the delegates talked about CDP, and I want to take a moment to also thank Minister Burney, who held before the Jobs Summit a gathering of a lot of the CDP and job providers before the Jobs Summit, which the outcomes from the CDP got mutual obligations and how it might work in remote communities was fed into the Jobs Summit. So we're certainly looking forward to looking at how we can work within this government, but also with those communities to try and get outcomes for Aboriginal people in a lot of those communities. It was also a privilege to be in the crowd to listen to the words of Thomas Mayer, a proud Torres Strait Islander man born on Larrakia country and a strong champion of the Uluru Statement of the Heart. Thomas spoke strong words during the Vincent Lingiari lecture at Kalkaringi, and he called on all Australians to have the courage to walk with our first Australians in the journey towards the voice to Parliament. Because the sad reality is that the battles that Vincent Lingiari faced for justice nearly 60 years ago are the same battles we are fighting today. These battles look a little different. Our country and our world is a much different place. But at the root of these battles, the issues are the same. The lack of a voice for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, the lack of autonomy in decision-making. In his address, Thomas spoke about the institutions that have come before us, tasked with representing Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people at the national level. Thomas said, and I quote, "From the Australian Aboriginal Progressive Association in the 1920s, which was silenced through the brutal intimidation by authorities who had complete control over our lives, through the Aboriginal Advancement League, the NAC, the NACC, the FAAA ATSI, to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Commission, or ATSIC, which was established in 1988. All of them split up, ignored, defunded and destroyed." Let those words sink in. At every stage that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders have sought to amplify our voice, to gain control of our lives and our communities, we have been set back. An invitation to walk with First Peoples of this country was a gift through the Uluru Statement of the Heart, and I'm proud to be part of a government who has committed to starting that process. It was not about setting our First Peoples apart. It was not about some hierarchy of people at its core. It was about how we move forward and come together. To the people of Kalkaringi, the Gurindji, to the 4 land councils, and particularly to Thomas Mayer, who I've quoted in this speech, and to who all attended, I thank you, and I will certainly make sure that as the member for Lingiari, I advocate strongly for all of your aspirations that had been talked to both Senator Dodson and I. And it was a special moment for me and for so many others who attended this great festival. Thank you.
I thank the member for Lingiari for her contribution. And